Greetings all, it's DFuxa, and we're about halfway through the summer season, start of August. So, I've been pretty busy over July, and I haven't had much time to record a whole lot of stuff. I did do a few recordings for Grey Goo, so that is working again, which is good. But I didn't yet complete recording all the missions yet, so still a bit more of that to go. But anyhow, on to what's basically happening for the month of August so far. So first, it's worth knowing that I still have these mini-series going on. I have Gunpoint and I basically have Brave, which will basically be making up the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for the first 2 weeks of August. On Sundays, I also have Dungeon Dremore. There's still all these other Dungeon Dremore episodes basically air. You haven't seen them yet, but eventually they'll be airing as well. And then I got some new stuff being planned, so to speak, that was basically recently recorded. So as of recently, the developers for Hive Trip decide that they give early access to anyone who basically was a Kickstarter, and I was a Kickstarter for Hive Jump, so basically I got early access to it. I've done a few videos for this game, basically be able to get a bit more of a showing of what the game's all about. Basically, I go through, I play with the different weapons, I go through the different bosses, and basically everything that's being showcased in the early access thus far. I'm basically showing off in I think the first Friday and Saturday of August. And it's worth knowing that Death Road to Canada was recently also released. So Death Road to Canada, I actually had access to the early access for this, but it was actually released as a complete game recently. So I decided that I'm going to be jumping into actually doing some Let's Plays for this game finally. And you'll finally be able to see why, I sort of kickstart this game and what this game's all about. Where you're basically, on a road trip, to Canada through a zombie apocalypse and all that. Now, as a note, I also have, Neo Scavenger on the go. I haven't done any recent episodes for Neo Scavenger because, basically right now, there's going to be a couple of showcases happening on Thursday, this Thursday coming. And I'm also going to have, Death Road to Canada, so replacing Neo Scavenger. One thing I'm going to do with Neo Scavenger is I want to basically maybe play this game sort of from start to finish with just get the series out of the way type of idea. Basically, this is a cool game, but I think that the thing about this game is that I haven't really had any really good starts, and when I have had a good start, I've scrapped it because CC cleaner and stuff like that. This is the type of game where if you get a good run, great. If you don't get a good run, it's gonna take a while. Basically, you can actually die repeatedly in this game if you're not careful. If I get a good run though, I want to basically keep playing until I get to the end of it and get finished and out of the way. So that'll be something I plan to do with this series at some point. I'm replacing it with Death Road to Canada, on Thursdays, but basically. I plan to basically do complete more recording of this series and then just start uploading it. I think is what will be a plan for it. That's sort of similar with Great Goo here. So I've already got all these Great Goo missions basically recorded, and these are all uploaded in February. I've also at this time recorded a bit more, so I got basically the rest of the human missions done, and I've started getting to the Great Goo missions. Now I'm thinking that with Great Goo, what the plan will be. I want to basically play through this game, I guess, until I sort of complete the Great Goo campaign. Maybe I'll do a skirmish with the Shroud because that's a new faction which basically released with the Great Goo game and show that off. I'm not sure I'll do more than that, but I basically want to show off what Great Goo is all about. I think with the completion of the Great Goo and maybe playing a skirmish with the Shroud, that would be all I need to do for it. So that'll be more as the plan. I don't know when this will be released. I might just put these after Braid and Gunpoint on one of these Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Haven't really decided yet. That's just something to throw out there. Alright, so that's basically a little bit of what's going on with a lot of the stuff that I basically have here. Now, I also want to make a good point of this video that I was busy during the month of July. And something I was busy doing in the month of July was assembling the big list of Steam Roguelikes. So, for those who haven't really been paying attention to anything I basically say in these videos, I play a big part in the Roguelike group on Steam. And, apart from doing the Roguelikes of the week, which I've also, been doing quite a bit, for the past little while, I decided that the list that basically the guy who started this group up, Boss Gala, he basically had this list basically from a while ago that was being outdated. He basically started the list, but didn't really continue it. I decided that I want to maybe jump in do an updated list. So here's the updated list I basically put up for this group. And essentially this is a big Steam Roguelike list. I basically list all the different roguelikes and sort of categorizes them into like different types of like rogues that they are. So to basically throw it out here, you have like your traditional roguelikes, which basically consist of like the 8-way mover roguelikes like Tales from Magiel, Dungeon Mans, and all this other stuff over here. You can go down and jump say to like the action top-down roguelikes, so you can get your like your Binding of Isaac type of games down here if you want it. And then further still, if you want, you can also jump to say like the miscellaneous roguelikes, and you can get like these like not really shall we say like prevalent type of games, but not exactly like not roguelike games. Like say we got Hunters of Dead and Dungeons of the Endless, some of the card games down here, a couple of multiplayer online games. I also have a couple like lists for like not roguelikes. Basically, there's basically a lot of games that are in like the roguelike in Steam's roguelike tag that really aren't roguelikes, but these are like the games that like I don't consider to be roguelikes, but they're tagged as such. So I figured I need to be put in a list somewhere, and not roguelike seemed like the most appropriate place for it. So I was actually really busy over July, and a big part of like what I was doing in July was just assembling this list, and it took a long time to basically make it. And as a result, I spent a whole lot of time basically assembling this list and not really doing recordings. And whether or not you consider it a good thing or a bad thing, you'll probably be seeing a whole lot of fresher content for my Let's Plays. But yeah, basically this is like a lot of stuff I was basically doing. Feel free, by the way, to jump on to my profile in Steam, and you can actually find this guide here. Rate it up, rate it down, do whatever you want with it. I think I did a fairly good job going through like the the game's type of roguelikes here, which is basically anything that has like roguelike attached to it, which are by your developers or players. It comes with this big list here, and at some point I'll have to jump in here and like tag Derelict as something in here. So I'll probably like after I finish this recording, I'll jump in and I'll put like Derelict as a roguelike somewhere, but whatever. Basically anywhere that is in that like big roguelike tag group, I basically went through that and like categorized into like the different like types of roguelikes. So that's where it basically came from. And on top of that, I also went through a couple of like the Roguelikes Curator. That's like another group that's on Steam, and I basically like added in any other type of games that were in that tag list. So I did a lot of work on it. I think I did a lot of work on it. I think I did a fairly good job doing a lot of work on it. Take what you will from it. Now, also note is that Roguelikes of the Week. I do this of course quite a bit. And something else that I was basically doing, in addition to like the guide that I basically did, I decided that it might be a good idea to maybe like start looking through some of like the games that have been suggested to me, and these are just some of the games that I found. Now, one of my heroics is actually a game that I basically did a Let's Play of, so I'll probably be putting that as like into the Roguelikes of the Week sooner than later. But here's like a bunch of other games that I've yet to actually play, but I felt that after going through like the roguelike tag and like seeing like some of the games that people were suggesting, I figured that these might be some good suggestions to to go in here. So I actually spent some time looking through Let's Plays myself of these games to basically see what they're how they played and what they're all about. And I figured that these will be like the games I'll be like suggesting in the near future for like Roguelike of the Week. So I've been doing lots of work with like the Roguelike group, and between like the guide and like determining what games should be going next in the future. I haven't spent a whole lot of time doing Let's Plays and stuff, but whatever. It just means that you'll be getting some fresher Let's Plays when I get to it. And I suppose I should also say something about doing Let's Plays right now. Right now it's really hot, and I'm not sure if you guys know a whole lot about like humidity and like temperatures, but basically right now it's like hovering around 30 degrees or 25 degrees Celsius. So it's 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. Right now, basically in my room. I have a Fahrenheit temperature guide here. It's basically reading 80. So it's basically 80 degrees Fahrenheit right now in my room, like for this like recording right now. It's kind of hot, and I really don't like doing like recordings like this when it's really hot like this. So I actually do a lot of less recordings, and you may actually not see any recordings for some days this month, just for some reason I didn't do anything because it's too hot. Basically, it's really hot right now. And it may be like this until like the end of September or around like mid-September, depending on how hot it stays. So what's going to happen is you're likely going to see me do a whole lot less Roguelike span, and maybe even take like September off, basically to just reset, wait for it to cool off a little bit, stuff like that. But whatever. Basically, this is going to be it for right now. Eventually, I'll do some recordings. I'll get back into the groove. And I'll basically see my channel get a lot more active when I basically go through a lot of this other stuff over here. For now, take care.